Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for Sunday, August 19th, 2012. A look at what's going on out there, lots to talk about. Hurricane Gordon getting ready to pass through portions of the Azores. Then we have 94L out here trying to ramp up, slowly but surely doing what it can to survive all this dry air that's still out here. Then we have the leftovers of Helene trying to make a comeback in the western Gulf. I think you can clearly see this cold front moving through the eastern part of the United States as well. And if we take a look at things one at a time here on the satellite shot, this is an infrared picture, and it shows the different colors of the cloud tops relating to their temperatures. So these cloud tops here associated with 94L, the blues and yellows, those clouds are lower in the atmosphere than the ones here associated with the leftovers of Helene. And that red there, that's higher up as well. So you don't have a lot of deep convection out here over the deep tropics, is my point. It's interesting, though, that you do have a little bit deeper convection out ahead of 94L. Maybe conditions, once you get past, especially 50 degrees of longitude here, maybe conditions get a little bit more favorable. In terms of the system in the western Gulf, I don't see it doing much, at least not in the global models. It doesn't mean that it can't. I just don't see it being picked up on by the models, the dynamic global models. It will bring a lot of rainfall to portions of Mexico, and with this front draping in, that'll help to act as a focusing mechanism as well, wringing out some moisture across portions of the Gulf Coast. But I don't see much potential for anything significant to come of that system. Looking at Gordon as it's about to pass through the Azores Islands here, could bring hurricane conditions to the area, but it's getting sheared, meaning that its circulation, instead of everything going straight up like this, and the circulation being nice and vertical, it's tilted with height. So the circulation is trying to work harder to maintain itself because it's getting blown faster in the upper levels than it's moving. So it gets sheared, plus the water temperatures ahead of it are colder and colder. Nonetheless, it still might be a hurricane as it passes through the Azores Islands, and then eventually towards the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain as a remnant low. Mentioned the dry air in the get-go, and there it is. You can clearly see definite slug of dry air still. It's not a slug either. It's a quite a vast expanse of it, just dominating the Atlantic Basin now, out in the deep tropics anyway. But there is a little area down here just south of all that dryness that is favorable for convection to form. And as I mentioned, you can see this area here, deeper convection than what you've got with 94L. And I think once this moves closer to this region and the heat content increases, that it'll start to strengthen. Now it's interesting because the ship's model, this is brand new, coming out, the 18Z hurricane models, these simple, usually they have the beta and advection models, the BAMs, the BAM shallow, the deep, the medium. Well, on this particular run, all they put in for 18 UTC was the ships, the intensity. Initialized at 25 knots, and in 48 hours becomes a hurricane according to the ship's model. Now this is a statistical model. It is not your dynamical, more advanced, three-dimensional supercomputer model. This is a more simplistic statistical model based on different inputs such as sea surface temperature, shear, heat content, things like that. And so it runs with it based on what it has. But it is a much simpler model than the more advanced dynamic models. Just want to put that out there. Because it shows 90 knots, 105 knots, 108 knots by 5 days. That is a significant hurricane. Will it do that? It doesn't look like it will, but you can't write it off because this is at least showing that the shear would not be significant at all because you're able to reach major hurricane intensity here. So we'll just have to see if it can overcome some of these other hurdles, such as that vertical instability issue that we've seen for almost the entire hurricane season. The heat content, as I mentioned, one of the things that the ship's model takes into account, and 94L will eventually be moving into higher heat content here, and if the 5-day and then 7-day GFS is correct, it'll move towards progressively higher heat content in the Caribbean. The weaker this stays, the farther south and west it'll travel, simply because it won't be as large in the atmosphere, and so it'll be steered more by the low-level flow than the deeper layer steering of the atmosphere. It's a story for another day, but in very simplistic terms, if they stay weak, they usually travel more south and west. If it gets strong and large and takes up a lot of room in the atmosphere, it would tend to be further north and maybe even able to curve out to sea. You never know. Alright, so the model, the GFS, is one of my favorites to watch, mainly because we have access here in the United States and anywhere with an internet access to all the different features that the model offers, free of charge. You pay for it with your tax dollars. The Euro is harder to do. You have to pay for that, and it gets very, very expensive to really see the high-resolution European model stuff. And many people regard the Euro as the superior global model. Sometimes it wins, sometimes it loses, and the GFS will do well. But I like the GFS myself, as you can look at the different layers. And today I'm at the 5,000-foot layer, 850 millibars in the atmosphere. This is valid Monday morning, tomorrow morning. And we see here we're looking for vorticity. This round shape. This is Gordon. And you see how it's much more round, and it has concentric circles inside of it. That tells me that it has energy and vorticity. Without getting into the math and the physics of it, simplistically, this is more energetic and has more spin than this, 94L. Now if we go out to 48 hours, you see 94L trying to consolidate there and become more round and increase its vorticity, as you see over here on the scale. The higher up on the scale you go, the more energy and vorticity you see. There's Gordon passing out of the Azores and heading towards the Iberian Peninsula as a weakening low. 72 hours from now, 94L, or whatever it is, if it gets to be named, it would be Isaac, entering the Northeast Caribbean Sea. Still not very formidable. And then at 96 hours and 120 hours, still, you just don't see the mark of a very strong system here. That doesn't mean it won't be, because remember, intensity forecasting is the toughest side of the whole equation here. It could be a 108-knot hurricane. It could still be an open wave. There's no way to know for sure. You have to kind of look at what's going on and look at the environment ahead and try to determine logically what to expect from there. If it looks like a negative environment ahead of it, then all things being equal, it'll probably maintain the status quo or weaken. But if it appears it is moving into a very favorable environment, especially one where the dry air has mixed out and your wind shear is low to non-existent, then these things can definitely ramp up quickly. So the 5-day position here, putting it near the Greater Antilles, day 6 over Jamaica, and then day 7 somewhere in the Northwest Caribbean Sea. Now this whole region, as you know, is where the heat content is the highest. So we'll have to see if this indeed is the case. Where will it really be in a week? Will it be here? Will it be out here near Bermuda? Will it be somewhere off the Florida coast? Big question mark, because we just don't know. I think a lot of it has to do on how fast it intensifies, if it does at all. It should. It's got a vigorous, large envelope of energy, and it's hard to think that it'll just die away. It's also not moving west at 25 miles per hour. It is moving slower, meaning that the trade winds are slower. Things have calmed down a little bit more since Ernesto, and it has a better chance to develop. So we're going to want to watch that pretty closely, and we will do so in the coming week. Again, I'm Mark Suttoth for HurricaneTrack.com. Always a pleasure to produce these videos for Hurricane and Hurricane HD, and I'll continue that tomorrow as we get into the week ahead and we watch what happens with Gordon going through the Azores and 94L approaching the Caribbean Sea. Until then, have a good rest of your Sunday, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.